Hello friends, I'm Victoria. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. Today, I'm finally getting to it. I'm so behind, but today I'm gonna go through my worst reads of 2023. Surprisingly, I didn't have too many flops. I read 145 books in 2023, and really I only had like 10 books that I really disliked, which is amazing. I feel like I am pretty fair in my rankings of books. If I think a book is just okay, I give it 3 stars. If I actively disliked it, I give it 2. And then if I hate it, I give it 1 star. I had no 1 stars last year. 1 star is something where I'm like, this book has to like physically and mentally make me angry. And luckily I didn't have any of those. I'm sorry if you can hear my dog. He's upset about the neighbors. Come on, it's okay. So I feel like last year was a huge success. Definitely my biggest reading year ever by far. I read so much, and I'm excited to go through these books with you because I feel like some of these books are really popular, and just for me, they were total misses. And I feel like some of these people, I don't know, the reviews, I'm like, how? I'm confused. And I just want to talk about it because I feel like some of y'all have to feel the same way also about these books. So we'll see. But like I said, there's only 10 books in this list that were like really below a 3 star. And yeah, I'm gonna go through them with you. My first flop was What Lurks Beneath by Ryan Lockwood. Now this is there's something in the water, there's a creature trying to eat people. And it ended up being really disappointing and also just kind of cheesy. We have these people who are hearing about these accidents off of this island, and I want to say, I can't remember exactly where it is. We're in like some tropical place. It might be Jamaica. I can't remember. Somewhere in the Caribbean. We have these like divers and kind of like scientists, underwater scientists. What would they be called? I don't know. Divers that study things and study sea creatures that are hearing about these accidents, and people getting hurt, people disappearing, and they end up going there to kind of try to figure out what lurks beneath. I am very much the kind of person that is easily scared by water horror. So anything with the ocean, I am not a good swimmer, and horror typically set in bodies of water usually scares me. This was just cheesy. My biggest issue is that we are switching POVs, and one of the POVs is the sea creature that is going after people. So every time some suspense would start to pick up and you'd be like, oh, something's gonna happen, or like these people would be in the water and like we're hearing that they're just having fun, and then you're like, oh no, something's gonna happen. We switch to the sea creature's point of view, and it totally like takes away the suspense. Instead of us getting the POV from the people that are about to be attacked, we are just having the sea creature being like, I am hungry, I want to go after them, and then they do. So it just took away from the book, in my opinion, and really anything that could have been scary just turned cheesy. And it takes some weird turns. Surprisingly, like the last bit of it does pick up, and there were some parts where I was like, okay, there's some action here, but overall a big flop for me, and I do not recommend it. Next up is Big Swiss by Jen Began. Now, this one is a book about unhinged, strange women, and typically that is right up my alley. I usually love that kind of premise. And this one is about this girl who she transcribes for a sex therapist, and the therapist sends her the recordings and she like transcribes them so that he can have those notes. And she ends up becoming kind of obsessed with one of his patients. She ends up working her way into finding who this person is and into their life. On paper, this would be a perfect kind of book for me. But there was so much about this that bothered me. There's definitely some language in here and talk about different races that is just not okay. And kind of shockingly so. So do not love that. And our characters, all of them were supposed to be like bad people. We're not supposed to like any of them, which is fine. But the way that these characters talk to each other, like their conversations that they would have, I was like, no one talks to people like this. Like it kept taking me out of it because I'm like, who is having conversations like this? And it felt too pretentious and like was trying too hard to be edgy or unique or smart. And it did not work for me. And especially once you realize that it's saying some really horrible things about these races, like as a joke, definitely a big flop, and I do not recommend it. And the language just, nope, not a good one. My next big flop, and definitely one of my least favorite books ever, is The Handyman Method by Nick Cutter and Andrew F. Sullivan. Oh, this book has so many issues. We are supposed to have this haunted house book where this family moves in to this community. It's one of the first homes built like in this new development. And our main character, the husband, he has been out of work. He got laid off, really kind of fired in a bad situation that he had part in. And he's kind of like struggling with his masculinity and like him not being the breadwinner anymore. And then him trying to like use this home and like manly handy work around the house to like make him feel like a big strong man. And we get this sense of a haunting, but he's watching these YouTube videos where he's learning how to do these different handyman tasks around the house. And this YouTuber is like giving him subliminal messages, but it's not subliminal. That's kind of what's annoying about it. But this YouTuber just gets progressively more sexist and misogynistic and is like feeding him these ideas and really putting him into a spiral and turning him into a horrible person. It's very much like, if it has a huge feel of Amityville horror, and there's like a little bit, I feel like, of Poltergeist in there as well. But I think I said that it was kind of like a mix of The Shining and Amityville horror with a little bit of Poltergeist. We also have like Something with the Kid, which that area I thought was more interesting and more a little bit spooky, because I love when like scary haunting things happen with children. But it's very unoriginal. I felt like I had read it before. There was nothing in, there really wasn't much of a redeeming quality to it. I liked the last few pages, but it's kind of frustrating because it's like the idea of the subliminal messages are supposed to like turn this person bad, but he's just bad from the very beginning. I know it causes his true colors to kind of come out more, but I don't know. I was bored. I was waiting for something exciting to happen, and the twist, it was so unoriginal, and I was just like, really, this is what it is. And I just got really frustrated from that point on. So I feel like this book was trying to say something about toxic masculinity, but it totally missed the mark and almost like did the opposite of what I think it was trying to do. So yeah, hard pass for me, and I do not recommend. Okay, next up we have The House in the Pines by Anna Reyes. Oh, this book is bad. And actually the reviews on this one reflect that pretty much. The Handyman Method has pretty low reviews too, but this one has 3.12 stars on Goodreads, and that's usually pretty bad. I feel like it's hard to find a book that is actually below 3 stars, but this one is getting close to that. So this book, we have this girl who is kind of having some mental issues, and she also has huge gaps in her memory. And when she was in high school, one of her friends just like dropped dead, and she believes like this guy had some sort of like telepathic or some sort of way of making her friend die without touching her. And then she comes across a YouTube video where the same guy is in this video sitting across from this woman, and she drops dead at a diner. And she's like, oh my God, it's him. And she ends up going back home. And all through this, she's kind of like struggling with, I don't know if addiction is the right word, but she is struggling with like, I can't remember if it's drugs or drinking, but something like that. And she's kind of like in and out of consciousness pretty much. So she's struggling with that area, but then she also like meets this guy. It's so hard to talk about because I'm just like, it's all over the place. We have her, she has this relationship with this guy, something seems off, who can we trust? And she starts like, she keeps like losing consciousness, and like having these huge gaps in memory. Like she'll wake up and she'll be like, I don't know what happened. And then you're like, well, is it because she's having these issues with, substance abuse, or is it because this guy is doing something to her? And the way that this ends up, it's just, it's just underwhelming, so bad. It's messy. Nothing makes sense. I'm just like, okay, well, why? The whole book, I'm just like, why? And I feel like it tries to go in different directions where I feel like if it committed to that, then it could have been a lot better. But I feel like we're like kind of being pulled all over the place, and it doesn't really grasp on to one area enough for it to like make a full-fledged story or like make sense and all the pieces come together enough. It's just not good. It's kind of hard to talk about because I'm just like, nothing in this book makes sense. It's very underwhelming, not worth your time, and I'm not even being harsh. It's just not a good book. So that's all I'm going to say about The House in the Pines. Also not scary, and I feel like it could have been. So yeah. Next up is one that I read more recently around Christmas time, and that is The Christmas Appeal by Janice Hallett. Hallett? I don't know. I gave this one 2 stars. It was so underwhelming and boring and felt like a cash grab. I feel like a lot of holiday Christmassy books are a cash grab, especially this one is based off of The Appeal, which is a very popular kind of cozy mystery, I believe, which I haven't read, but this is like a standalone. It does include some of the same characters, but it's a totally different story. And yeah, this just felt like, let's slap Christmas on this book, on this cozy mystery about a play held around Christmas time. The play isn't even Christmas. It's not even a Christmas play. I think they're doing like Jack and the Beanstalk. So the play isn't even Christmas. There's nothing Christmas about this book. I literally feel like they just had like this cozy mystery about this play, and they were like, well, how about we just make it a Christmas release because people will eat that up. And yeah, it feels very gimmicky to me. And the mystery was just bad. The twist was very underwhelming. I was just like, okay, so it's really nothing bad or that, you know, it led us to think it was going to be at all. And just overall, I cannot recommend it. Especially like, I do feel like there's some Christmassy books out there that are much better, especially just within the cozy mystery realm, like something that actually just makes you feel kind of good and is a little bit fun and silly. And gives you the Christmas atmosphere. This wasn't it, no. Next is one of the installations in the Creature Feature collection from Kindle Unlimited. And this one was Paul Tremblay in Bloom. Now, all the other little short stories within this collection I really enjoyed, but this one, well, except for one other one. But this one was definitely a flop for me, and that is In Bloom by Paul Tremblay. Now, this one is about these algae blooms, and we're off of Cape Cod. There's these weird algae blooms, and things start to happen with these algae blooms. But the setup of this one was very strange. We have a journalist, and she is hearing about these stories back in the 80s that are similar to the stories with the algae blooms that are happening today, where like people are disappearing and like there's something going on with these blooms. He ends up going to interview one of the kids that was there the day that someone disappeared in the blooms in the 80s. I feel like the journalist could have been left out entirely. We could have just had the story set in the 80s with that POV, with the POV of the kid, like watching this unfold. And I feel like it would have been much more immersive. We also had this horrible romance between the journalist and like her like roommate that she loves and and her roommate that she's like actually in love with. And I'm like, why is this even in here? This has nothing to do with the story or the plot at all. And I just couldn't care. Like I could not care less about it. So this was a flop, and most of the stories in this collection are really good, so yeah, maybe skip this one though. Next up is Tell Me I'm Worthless by Alison Rumfitt. Now, I appreciate what this story was trying to do and what it was trying to convey. I really do. And I do want to read more from this author, but this one kind of missed the mark for me. This book is from multiple POVs, but we have these friends who they had a falling out, and we're kind of unsure from the very beginning what actually happened, because they were each saying that these horrible things happened when they went to this like haunted house, and it kind of destroyed their lives, and they are envisioning and remembering what happened that night differently. And we're following them just kind of living and coping with everyday life, but then they feel like they're being pulled back towards this haunted house. And we also get the POV of the haunted house, which I thought was super unique and really cool, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and I honestly would have liked some more of it because they definitely were a little bit more scary, and the house would be talking about why they went into this, what happened to this house in the past that turned it into this haunted demon house basically. And I really enjoyed that. I thought that was a really unique way to tie those stories and elements in. But I do have some issues with how this book portrays SA, and it really, I almost feel like it was using it for the sake of being edgy. I also do not enjoy when books use SA as the main horror element, where it's like, this is what should scare you because obviously this is like the scariest thing that could happen to a woman. I feel like that's very lazy, and I feel like there are so many other things that you could do to actually scare the audience rather than using SA. And I don't enjoy that. And I definitely understand that in some books, like, that happening is a huge, plot point. I don't feel like it was in this book. I feel like a lot of that subject matter within this book specifically was used to shock and be more edgy, and it took up almost the whole book. So if you have any triggers or anything like that, I do not recommend this book at all. I do appreciate what this was trying to do when it came to like telling a story from a trans perspective, and I definitely appreciate that. It just wasn't the right book for me, and I feel like it hit some points in a way that I just did not agree with, mainly just about the essay element. I do enjoy that this book is by a trans author. I think that's really amazing, and I hope to read more novels from trans authors going forward. And this one definitely does talk about, as a whole, it's kind of like a metaphor for like everything is bad right now. Our house is on fire. Things are kind of burning down, and it, uses points within the trans experience to, loop that in and tell that story, which I appreciate. But yeah, my larger issues were just with the use of SA as such a large plot point and just a continued driver of the horror almost through the whole book, where I would have just liked something a little bit more different and more creative. I didn't hate this one, I just would not recommend it. My next flop was Looking Glass Sound by Catriona Ward, which is very disappointing to me because I absolutely love The Last House on English Street by them. I think it's fantastic. So I had high hopes for this one, and this one was a flop for me. When I was going through my Goodreads to like come up with my list for this, I gave it 3 stars, but I was like, why? I need to go back and correct that because it's stuck with me as something that has like bothered me throughout the rest of the year after reading this book. So every time I would think about it, I'd be like, God, that book. So I don't know what I was thinking right after I read it, but now I'm like, no. I think I was trying to be nice, simply because it definitely is creative. It is different. It is not at all what the synopsis would have you think it is. It's described kind of as a haunting in the synopsis, where we have this guy who is grown up now, and he's a writer, and he's kind of like writing a book about something that happened in his childhood. But we start out in his childhood. They're on the coast at a like vacation home for the summer, and he is making these friends, but at the same time there's like women going missing and people being murdered, and they're like, who is it? And then we are jumping kind of back and forth. We have that going on, and then we jump to the next summer, the person gets caught, and then we jump to years later, and he's like remembering, and he's going back to this house and kind of remembering what happened. And there's so many layers here that it's honestly kind of frustrating, and it's marketed as a horror, and I personally was like, where? There's some elements of like the crime mystery at the beginning, but that's a very small part. And then, as they grow older, he goes to college, and then he is grown up, he's gonna go back and write this book. It spirals, and it turns very much into a fantasy. It's very hard to talk about because the direction that it goes is bonkers. So It truly makes no sense. And I know some people really enjoy this book. It just totally missed the mark for me. I kept being like, when is it gonna end? When is it gonna end? I was bored. It kept pulling us in all these directions and it was just like too much. And I was like, please calm down and please make something spooky happen, because I wanted to be a little bit scared. Like, where's the horror? It's not there. So yeah, the first half I was like, okay, this is fine. And then I was just like, oh no. So, but yeah, this is definitely original and different, but I cannot recommend this to anyone. It is all over the place. It had my brain hurting and I was like, please make it end. Like, I'm so sick of this book by the time I was almost done with it. And yeah, I was just so happy for it to be over. And my next flop is another one that was not marketed correctly. We have an issue with synopsis in the book community lately. I feel like they are really just lying. I'm sorry if you can hear Jeffrey's playing with his toy. But sometimes I feel like they read the synopsis and I'm like, did you read this book? Who wrote this synopsis? Because that's not the same book that I read. So this one's about Silver Nitrate by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. Definitely, it is for sure marketed as a horror, and we're supposed to have kind of like an element of magic and witchcraft and the occult, and then also like Nazism, where there's like this cult group of Nazis, and then we're also following like a cursed film within it all that kind of ties all of these people together. Oh, it's boring. It is boring. There's so much info dumping. Pretty much nothing even remotely scary at all happens until like the 50% point, and then we're just kind of like giving a glimpse of like, oh, is someone there, like kind of thing. And for it to go into like the occult Nazi element in the synopsis, like literally I'm looking at the synopsis right here. It's in the first sentence. Like on Goodreads, it's like, it says, comes a fabulous meld of Mexican horror movies and Nazi occultism. It's not that. Like, if this was marketed differently, I might have not hated it so much. It's very much a slow burn. Not a ton happens. And then at the end, I was just like, okay. The ending, I wanted something really to go down with the cult and like the film. And because there was so much info dumping and like slow burn happening throughout the majority of the book and not a ton of horror at all, I was really banking on the end to really bring that out and for something wild to really happen. And I was just so underwhelmed and disappointed, and this was not at all what I had signed up for when I read this book. So yeah, I do not recommend it. I know some people like it, but it was a huge miss for me. Okay, friends, and here we have my last one and my least favorite book of the year, and that is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I know some of y'all are probably like, really? No, some of y'all are probably like clicking out of this video right now, like you can't trust me. But I'm not saying this to be edgy at all. I had never heard of this series when I read it. I read it very early on in 2023. I think like maybe like February-ish. Let me look. Yeah, I read it. I wrote the review. Yeah, I rated it on Goodreads on February 16th. So I feel like it hadn't popped off yet. And to be clear, I've never read the ACOTAR series, so, you know, I don't know anything about that either. And honestly, those kind of books aren't really up my alley. I'm not like a big series person, especially when it's like very large books. Like I'm reading Fourth Wing. I read Fourth Wing in like June, and then I didn't know it was a series at that time. So I was like, oh. Because typically I just don't pick up series. I don't like waiting. I forget throughout, like waiting for the next book to come out. And usually they're like longer, and I just hate that level of commitment when it comes to my reading. I like short one and dones kind of thing, and then I can move on to the next, you know? But this one, I picked this one up because it was a book club read. So I am in a book club with some girlfriends, and this was one of their picks. Now, they had all read ACOTAR and really loved it. So they wanted to read this anyway, so they just used it as the book club pick. And I read it, and I struggled through this book. Let me tell you what, I had the hardest time making it through this book. I feel like I would have loved this book when I was like in high school. Like if I was 15 and reading this, I'd be like, this is awesome, you know? And that's totally fine. For me at this point in my life, I'm hypercritical about a lot of the books that I read. I really am, especially when it comes to fantasy. I have a hard time with how women are described, how these characters are portrayed, and just kind of like I feel like so much has already been done within the fantasy realm that I just kind of feel like I'm repeating or reading something that I've already read before. But with Throne of Glass, I really had a hard time with our main character. She's very unlikable. She's supposed to be so powerful and like the best at battling and fighting, and she never sticks up for herself at one point at all through this book. And it's incredibly frustrating. I'm just like, what what's going on? Because I'm like, I don't understand why she was being so like, it was almost like she was diminishing herself. But I'm like, don't write a book based on a character who is like the best fighter and soldier in the realm when we don't even see her like hurt anyone pretty much the whole book. I'm like trying to think back, I'm like, did she kill a single person? I don't think so. And the whole time I'm just like, stick up for yourself. Why are you why? What's going on? And I was just incredibly frustrated. I just felt the writing was really and I hated it so much. I didn't give it 1 star, I gave it 2 stars, but like truly I hated this book. I'm trying to think of something redeeming about it. I feel like I've pushed most of it out of my brain at this point, because the thing is, like, pretty much everyone else in my book club also didn't like it. They were like, this is just bad, but I feel like it's really popped off, and I'm happy for you if you like it. I have also heard that like the first one is the worst one and then it gets better, but I don't like to commit to something when I'm like, the first book I didn't even like, and I'm not a huge series person anyway, like I mentioned. So yeah, just not for me. I hope that if you've read it, I hope you enjoyed it so you didn't waste that time either. But I hope, like, but people love this book and I am confused, but you know, to each their own. Okay, friends, so those were my worst books of 2023. Honestly, not bad. I feel like I really lucked out with how many books I read. I didn't have very many flops at all. So I am totally fine with these 10 flops out of 145 books. I might be the luckiest person out there. I don't know. I really had just such an amazing reading year last year. I am in a huge reading slump right now, so I'm hoping that things start picking back up for me and I can find something that I'm excited about, and really get back into the groove with my reading for 2024 and bring some more videos to y'all. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. And if you read any of these, please let me know what you thought about them. I'm always curious. I love to hear like other people's thoughts and opinions when it comes to books, because I know like sometimes they can be very divisive. Sometimes everyone loves one. Sometimes everyone's like, this was bad. So if you read any of these, let me know. And I just want to say thank you so much for being here. I am getting back into the swing of things with filming, so I appreciate you and your patience, because I haven't posted a video in probably like, well, since like Christmas, so it's been a minute. But thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you like other reading videos and vlogs and TBRs and wrap-ups, let me know. Also, I am a big horror reader. That is my favorite genre. So if you like horror, maybe hit the subscribe button. So yeah, thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day.